Good evening, everyone. It is now 5 o'clock, so we're going to start. My name is Dr. Michelle Kelly, and I am an Associate Professor at Emirates College for Advanced Education. I'm also the Program Coordinator for our ABA graduate programs. At Emirates College for Advanced Education in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, we offer 2 graduate programs in Applied Behaviour Analysis, or ABA. We offer a 1-year postgraduate diploma in ABA, and we offer a 2-year Masters of Education in ABA. And both programs contain verified course sequences from the Association for Behaviour Analysis International. If anyone is interested or wants further information about our ABA graduate programs here in Abu Dhabi, please feel free to email me and I will happily share some information. Meanwhile, I'll share some information with you in the chat function. So just a couple of things before we start, and I'm going to pass over to Dr. Clodagh very soon because she has lots of excellent material to share with you this evening. We will be offering 2 BACB learning CEUs, but these CEUs are only for those of you who are attending the session live. So these CEUs will not be available in the recording that will be shared after this presentation. So just to let you know that Dr. Clodagh has kindly agreed to share her slides. So we will be sharing both the actual PowerPoint presentation slides as well as the recording of the session. The biggest advantage of attending live this evening is that, of course, you can interact directly with both me and Dr. Clodagh. So how do you do this? So you may have noticed that upon entering the WebEx platform that you were automatically muted. Now, if you do wish to speak at any time, it is possible for me to unmute you. So you just need to message me in the chat if you wish to say something. However, there are a couple of options. So on your right-hand side, there is a chat function. Now, what I will ask you to do, please, is that if you are writing a message, before you send the message, can you just please go to the To option and click on Host and Presenter. This is to ensure that both me and Dr. Clodagh can see your message, okay? So I will be moderating and keeping an eye on the chat this evening, but it's important that Dr. Clodagh, as the presenter, also sees what you're saying. So thank you so much. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Clodagh Murray.
Hi, everyone. Also welcome to our talk this evening, and it's really great to see so many of you interested in this topic. So I'm going to start off by just telling you a little bit about myself and why I'm here tonight, I guess. So I'm an assistant professor in Emirates College for Advanced Education in Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and I work alongside Dr. Michelle Kelly on the ABA Masters and Postgraduate Diploma there. But how I got to this point in my career is a bit of a winding story, but my first job in the field of ABA was in an EIBI setting, so early intensive behavioural intervention. So we focused a lot on play at that point because we were working with children aged 3 to 5. And so a lot of what we were doing, even though we were doing discrete trials or more things that looked like a very classic behavioural program, we were doing them in different locations. We would run trials on the trampoline. We would really encourage play wherever we could and build our trials and our teaching through play activities. So after I graduated, my first academic post was at London South Bank University, where I was a lecturer in psychology. And at that time, I also consulted for another EIBI school. And this school was really interesting because it was opened by a group of ABA tutors who had always worked on home programs. And I find a lot of the home programs I've witnessed tend to be quite play-based because they're in the child's home, they have their own toys, they tend to, you know, it might be in a playroom, or so they tend to use a lot of toys and play. That was my observation with this group anyway. And so they had a massive focus on play, so much so that when they were hiring new staff, new ABA tutors, they didn't really care what they knew about ABA. They used to observe them playing with the children, or they would get them to read a story to the children, because they said if they are good at playing, if they're keen on playing, and if they can engage the children, We can teach them everything else. We can teach them principles. But if you're a fun person who's into play, then you're always going to get so much more out of the children. And I really learned a lot from that group of tutors, and I think 2 of them already have their BCBA out of that group. So congratulations. And that's the girls at the ARC Centre in London. The next thing I did was then I moved back to the National University of Ireland, Galway, which is where I had done my PhD. And at that point when I was supervising students, they were kind of interested in play and all of that. So I kept that going. And then finally last August, I moved to ECAE. And then the one bit I've missed is my actual study, which was all about play, or a lot about play. So I was interested in looking at increasing variability across multiple repertoires, but looking at increasing varied responding in people with autism as a remediation strategy for the very rigid repetitive behavior patterns we see in that group. So after a couple of basic studies, I then moved to applying this work to play. And I've really been interested in play my whole career through this trajectory that I've moved through. So that's me. I won't spend any longer talking about myself. I'm going to just contextualize my talk a little bit for the first couple of minutes, and you'll see where I'm coming from, and maybe I'll make the case for why play is really important. And it's an important aspect of development, and it's also an important thing that we should be teaching, okay? So when I was preparing this talk, I feel like I could talk for 24 hours, never mind 2 hours. There is so much to it in terms of play, investigating why children play, assessing play, which I will talk about a little bit, and then all of the different strategies for teaching play. And really what I would like you all to get out of, I thought I'll just put a practical workshop together. But I hope that what you'll get out of this evening's talk is that you will feel more confident in understanding why play is important and why we need to advocate for play. And then also, hopefully, you'll benefit from some of my top tips I've learned along the way for teaching play at all the different stages. So if we go all the way back to Plato, he said, do not keep children to their studies by compulsion, but by play. And I think this is really important, okay? So just for a minute, if you could go to the chat function, and that means we can test the chat function as well and make sure I can see it. What words or phrases come to your mind when you hear the word play? Just right away, 1, 2 words, fun, yes. Okay, we're all on the same page here. Anything else? Engagement is massive. Yeah, toys are important. Great. But I think we're all on the same page. Imagination is a great one. Choice is massive. Nice work there. Movement and smiling, that we can see all those things. Okay, I think we are all coming from the same place when it comes to play and why it's important. And I see someone there saying learning through play, which is great, that we know that this is how children learn about the world. So I think I've just given you one tip for your second question, but apart from just learning about maybe how the world works, why else do children play, do you think? Or maybe what are the benefits of play? Friends, enjoyment, yeah. Exploring is massive, especially when we talk if we talk about children with additional needs or children on the autism spectrum. We know that these exploration behaviors are actually happening at a much lower rate. The bonding and friendships, I love this. Oh my God, I could just look at this chat all day. Creative imagination, brilliant, I love it. So if we look at this, and as I'm saying, this mental and physical growth is popping up in my chat, let's just have a look at this for 1 second. There's so much going on here. There's enjoyment, there's social, there's a bit of joint attention going on there between the child looking down and the child looking up. They're like going, are you going to do it? There's so many things children can learn from just a simple thing like this, how their bodies work. What happens if you put your hand under that foot that's about to come down? Might be sore, but you'll learn from it. So children learn about the limitations of, and as well as the abilities of their physical body through play, communication and social skills, and look, tons of problem solving going on here. Okay, so great, we're thinking about play. But let's think about this, what I call a diversity of definitions. And this is your first problem when you want to teach about play. Is what is it? What is the most important aspect? So Tamil Samonda and colleagues who have written extensively about play actually summarized what people normally mention when they talk about play. So engaging in play for its own sake, right? Seemingly an intrinsic motivation, and it's accompanied by positive affect. So we see smiles, we see positive affect or faces or mood. So then we can look at like the pretense, creative, fantasy, and you can see here this word repetitive. And now when we're talking about play in children with autism, we're trying to avoid repetition. However, neurotypical play can be very repetitive, okay? So we want to not pathologize things that are actually not a problem or things that they will grow out of. And then we want to support these skills deficits that we see, okay? So at the start, for now, I'm going to talk about, I am talking more so about neurotypical play, so we can see what we need to do for our learners that may need more support, okay? So self-chosen and self-directed, we want children to be able to lead their own time in play, okay? The means are valued more than the ends, and I think this is really important. It's the process, it's the journey, not an outcome at the end of it. So just a little anecdote, when I was younger, I grew up in quite a small neighborhood, and all the children would play out on the road together or in each other's gardens. And we played a lot of pretend play, especially when we were younger. So I remember these games of like mommies and daddies, where someone's the big sister and someone's the baby, and of course someone's the mommy and the daddy. And these roles would rotate. And I remember thinking, but when does the game end? We never finished these games. And looking back now, I mean, what does that even mean? You know, does the game end when all the children grow up and go to college? And yes, mission accomplished, mom and dad, or there's no end to that game. And my only explanation is I was trying to analyze play even back then when I was 7 or 8 years old. But I am really, really fascinated with play and how we can support people who don't play or who play very little, okay? There's structure or rules that come from the minds of the players. So they're not always coming from the environment or from the physical world. Imaginative, or this word, like kind of removed in some way from serious life. So it's a representation of life sometimes. And then active, alert, but not stressed frame of mind. So this is going to be important when it comes to teaching play. We don't want to go in with loads of demands and to remove this fifth point. These are the things that make play, right? So we don't want our interventions to go against what play is supposed to be. And then I really like this. So it's not just our creative drive, it's a fundamental mode of learning, okay? This is important. We are now going to be play advocates, I hope. This is what I want. I want teams of people who will advocate for play and who will protect play. And hopefully I'll make a case for why now. So here I love this, play for the sake of play. And this is me being playful and saying it's okay to be silly or have things that are squiggly. And, you know, I'm just trying to always bring us back and go, how can we be fun here? Okay, so follow your creativity, even though it's very hard to operationally define that. So let's have a look at what I call the state of play. Okay, so we know, so it's recognized by the UN High Commission for Human Rights, and there's a convention on the rights of the child from 1989 that protects the right to play, or at least recommends this. So we know in many countries there are threats to play, to children being able to have free time to play in a self-directed manner. So in many countries, we've got very extreme threats where children have to work, where there's a war in their country, they live in extreme poverty, and play goes so far down the list of priorities. And then on the other hand, even with countries with relative peace who don't have these types of upheaval, play is actually under threat too. And we know that child-directed play, or what we call this free play, is decreasing in frequency due to the demands of modern life. So let's have a look at this. So here's the convention from 1989. And this is Article 31. So it says, and thank you for your feedback in the chat. That's really nice. So yeah, the states need to recognize the right of the child. So rest and leisure, of course, that's important. But today we're talking about play, engage in play and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child. And I think those of us who work in the developmental disability field might add there the age and ability of the child. So we might be having a child with an older chronological age, and we might need to target earlier skills or these prerequisite skills before we move them on to so-called age-appropriate toys or activities. And then we encourage the provision of appropriate and equal opportunities for cultural, artistic, recreational and leisure activity. So if we are ever talking about play and someone says that doesn't matter, well, actually the UN back in 1989 said it did matter, and there's been numerous position statements since that are saying it does matter, and how do we protect play? Oh, so I thought I would open a poll right now, and you'll have to bear with me. This was the bit I was worried about, but let's see. Excuse me. So I'm going to open this and just set these at like 30 seconds because I don't want them to take up our time. But I have created a list here of maybe some barriers, and I just want you to pick one actually. So read through them. What do you think is the main barrier to play in the community? Maybe the community you work in, or if you are from a different country, you can consider the community in your home country or your hometown. So I'm going to open this now. Okay. Oh, I have it for 1 minute, sorry. Okay. So I'm not sure if you can scroll down. I hope you can scroll down yourself. I put all the things I could think of. Okay. Yeah, so someone sent me some good feedback in the chat. Yeah, I did put in social inequality. I guess I should have been more explicit, actual child poverty, which is leading to a range of different problems, all of which are going to be, 1 second, all of which are going to be problematic and are going to affect play negatively. Okay, this gives us my, okay, so we've got a lot of people talking about academic pressures. Some people mentioned urbanization. That to me is just, you know, the reduction of green spaces. Extracurricular activities, not so problematic for you, okay. Not enough playtime in school, video games, the usual suspects. Okay, thank you so much for that. That really gives me a sense of where you're coming from. Okay. So in terms of the barriers, so we've just seen quite a lot of them, but yeah, we can have limited opportunities to engage with other children for a number of different reasons. The actual physical space, and someone said in the chat, yeah, parents are super busy these days. You know, I purposely didn't put that as an option because I don't want to put the blame on parents. If you've got a two-parent family who are working, you know, this is the reality of modern life. And I hope to just maybe empower people to look at for and protect playtime within their lives, you know. The space, yeah, the green space, or sometimes there's just no really safe places. You know, when I was young, growing up in pretty rural Ireland, we could go off on our bikes anywhere we wanted. In certain places, that's really not possible to let children out in such a free way, you know. Academic pressures, you know, the pressure to get into the best school and university, or to have the highest test results. In some cultures, there's what I call an abundance of extracurricular activities. So there's lots of different lessons and clubs, and it leaves very little time for this unstructured free play that we're interested in. And then electronic media, and that for me covers everything from the TV to the iPad to social media. And I think, yes, this great point in the chat about teacher training, you know, but teachers are under terrible pressure to get results. This sort of academic focused approach is, you know, it's a threat to playtime. Okay. So let's see. I just wanted to use this graphic from Diki Castle and Pryor, who talk really nicely about play. They tend to take a more cognitive approach rather than behavioral, but I like that they summarize the different aspects. So not having enough access to play can lead to these problems in multiple different areas. Okay, and even if we look at the physical, you know, I read a really nice article from Gilbert et al. And the references in at the end, and they talked to, it was aimed at pediatricians and the role that a pediatrician has to play in promoting playtime. And one of them was, you know, that a healthy body is involved in active play. So these are just my kind of tips in general. So this is covering neurotypical children, children with any diagnosis, but I think we need to really act and protect playtime, and this free unstructured playtime is really important. Reassure parents, those of us who are practitioners, that playtime is not a waste of time. You know, playtime is actually really, really important for child development. Encourage free play and like exploration, curiosity, not very structured. If the child wants to engage in structured play, that's fine, but it really should be child-led as much as possible. And then the benefits, physical, learning about your environment. How does the physical world work? Problem solving. We know that social and conversational skills follow from play skills. And this is my personal bias, a love of nature and a respect for the environment and the planet comes from being out in it and playing outside in nature. So that is really what I wanted to, I'm going to shift gear a little bit, and that's what I wanted to do in terms of contextualizing play, why play is important and why we need to really focus on play as a key aspect of child development and also a key component in our intervention programs when we do them. Okay, I have another poll coming. Here we go. So the poll is not what are the stages of development. I just want to ask a quick question. Yes, here we go. Just quick question. When you teach play skills, for those of you who do you consider developmental stages or developmental sequence, either of those? Okay. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to open the poll now. Yeah, developmental milestones, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so that's the time up there. Share. Okay, so what we're having is, yeah, so out of 232 people, not everyone, oh yeah, 145 said yes, they do consider developmental stages. Only 15 said no. That's great, and no judgment if you don't. So that's really amazing for me to see. When I first started teaching play skills, I don't even want to say how long ago, but somewhere around 2005, 2006, we really didn't actively consider developmental stages or actively look at the stages of play or how typical play develops. And there's a real move towards doing that in recent times, which I think is really promising. So look, depending, outdoor play, yeah, outdoor play, indoor play, physical, rough and tumble. So there's a question in the chat, am I including outdoor play in this? Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about play, I talk about really everything that can be considered, the things we talked about earlier, that it's not a means to an end, that it's intrinsically motivated, that they're showing enjoyment, all of these kind of things. So indoor and outdoor equally. In terms of age limits for the type, for what I'm talking about, you'll see I'm going to map onto neurotypical development. But for those of us who work with children with intellectual or developmental disabilities, I don't find those, the actual age brackets very useful, but I would like to work through the stages, and I hope that will become clear as we go. But I don't think the age is really that important. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but you will see my talk is more tailored for younger children, or children, you know, I guess under about 12. So you will, depending on who you read, there is so many different stages of play being described, but they all have a lot in common, okay? So, you know, Piaget was really the first. Back in 1962, Piaget was describing these stages of development and was mapping them onto play. And he really popularized the trend to look at play. So if we look at all of them and we can kind of combine them into something a bit more basic, we can really say that that children move from sensory motor play to functional to symbolic, with sensory motor being kind of exploratory in nature, exploring cause and effects, even putting things in their mouth, feeling things, rubbing the wall. People sometimes talk about, you know, if there's a bumpy wall. Then functional play is really playing with items in the manner they were intended. So if there's, you know, you have a bowl and a spoon, you know, feeding the dolly or feeding yourself. And then symbolic play is really all about imagination, you know, pretending that a car is an airplane, for example. And if we look at the social development, we see a general move from independent to parallel to cooperative play, where independent play is just playing on their own. Toys, at any view of parents, a box or a sunglass case or any of those things are just as good as the expensive toys. Parallel, where they're playing side by side, and then cooperative, where they're actually interacting. But then we can break this down further, and this table is from Charlotte Lang and Rispoli, and I have actually a picture of their book at the end. I find it a really, really useful resource, and you can see this is broken down much further. Now, for those of us who work with children with intellectual developmental disabilities, or the parents among us, I don't want us to get too hooked or caught up on this proximate age range, because our children are the children we work with are going to be free of that. And so we should be free of that, okay? So if I have a child who's functioning a lot lower than they are, I don't want to be targeting play that's too advanced when they don't have prerequisites. So a prerequisite, as you know, is just, it just means a skill that you need before you teach another skill, or a foundational skill. Okay, so I've just been asked to clarify. So functional play is really using the toy, for example, in the way it was intended. And then symbolic play is using your imagination, maybe substituting, like I said, using a car as a plane, or pretending that a spoon is a drumstick, those kind of things. Okay, so we can see here it's broken down much more. And this actually is really useful when we go to teaching play skills and seeing, are we actually moving them beyond what they're developmentally able for? Okay. And so I'd love to see now, okay, so I've just introduced this, and I'm going to move on and address these different stages in terms of like intervention. Just very briefly in the chat, if parents the question is, what if parents don't want to target play skills and are pushing for academic skills? Excuse me. Well, then I think you can make the case that there is a lot of research that's showing that play skills are important for neurological development, for example, for social development, for learning language. And so if we actually can teach play first and then teach through play, we should get a lot more learning. So our learning curve will be much steeper. So it's on us to really try and make that case. And again, this is why I'm talking about being a play advocate. So just before, I wanted to just introduce basically what these stages look like. And then I just want to talk about assessment. I won't spend too much time on assessment, but I really thought I shouldn't give a 2-hour workshop on play without talking about assessment at all. So I'm just going to open a poll, and actually it's an open-ended poll, so you all seem quite comfortable with the chat. So this is just the question. If you wouldn't mind just typing into the chat, what assessment have you used? or what assessment to use maybe in your practice. And just I saw a question up there. I don't think there is a such thing as too much playing. If the play is quite dysfunctional, you know, very repetitive, lining up, spinning wheels, then yeah, there might be such thing as too much play. But if, you know, to get really involved in imaginative play, yeah, I don't really think there is a such thing as too much play. Okay, brilliant. So I'm seeing a lot of the VB-MAPP, the early start Denver model, very nice. Okay, great. Mullins, I'm not sure of that, but yeah, great that you're using something. So these are just to be honest, there are quite a lot of them, and a lot of them are looking at play as a way to determine cognitive ability. As behavior analysts, we're not so interested in that. In terms of a behavioral approach to play, we're trying to look at the repertoires that they actually need, and then make task analysis down, or look at the components of these repertoires and see how we can teach the component skills and then chain them together to make more complex repertoires. Okay, so the ABLES is one, assessment of basic language and learning skills, and a lot of people are using the VB-MAPP, so verbal behavior milestones assessment and placement program, which is an overall a very comprehensive assessment commonly used in behavior analysis or behavior analytic programs. And we have a teacher, yeah, so have a look at the VB-MAPP, might be a nice start. I'll also just talk very briefly about play in early childhood evaluation system, and I like this because it's free. Again, it's very helpful for ideas of what kind of skills to prompt and in what sequence. The problem with a lot of play programming is we're trying to look at this age appropriateness, okay, of play. And then we might actually try and, you know, we can push children much too early into cooperative play with peers when they're just not ready. Okay, so that's why assessment is important. Here's a VB-MAPP, and you can see for the level 1, these kind of skills are on it, you know, manipulates and explores objects for 1 minute, okay? If a child can't do that, they have no business going into a play date where, you know, you're trying to get them to do turn taking. No, you're setting everyone up for failure in that case. Yeah, that's just an example. And here's this pieces. And here's the recording form. Again, all of these resources are free on their website. It's good for to get a kind of an idea of what you should be looking at. And you can see they are assigning the play codes, which I'll show you in a second. You can look at the partners, adult and child, whether they're initiating play activities or just following, and that's okay. They cooperating, conversation, or any interfering behaviors, and you can have it like, you know, in intervals, and maybe 5-minute intervals. And then the next thing are these codes, okay? And I like this. For example, look at these repetitive combinations, right? Child puts an empty cup to the doll's mouth, then the mouth of the experimenter, then to themselves, okay? So these, we don't want to see a lot of the same action happening over and over again, but these repetitive combinations are very useful. So feed the dolly, feed your mommy. You know, these kind of things are really good. And again, we don't want to push past, we don't want to target skills that are way beyond the child or that they don't have the prerequisites for. So this I like as kind of a guide to at least be looking at the type of activities, and also it gives us ideas of what we should be prompting in our programs. Okay, so there's just one example. So I encourage you to have a look. If you want to run a very specific play assessment, you could, this is an example of one that you could use. So now, okay, that's kind of my preamble. It's a very long introduction to what I really want to talk about, which is what are we going to do about it, okay? So I hope that I've kind of made the case for why play is important. And now I will be talking a lot about children who don't play the way their peers do, but in a way that's really holding them back, okay? So we know the applied nature of applied behavior analysis means that we focus on socially significant behaviors. To me, especially those of us who work with children, play is the #1 socially significant behavior, because all of your verbal behavior and the rest can follow from play, okay? So what can we do? And I do just want to open one more poll, make sure everyone's awake, but I'm really thankful for the level of engagement we have in the chat. Here we go. For those of you who are teachers or are interventionists of any kind who work with maybe children under 12, okay, I'm going to ask now, how confident are you in teaching play skills? Okay, so let's have a look at the results. So I've got, here's a summary. I have 31 people saying they're very confident. Go you, right? You now have a responsibility to share your knowledge, right? Train your colleagues, do workshops like this, make little YouTube videos. Somewhat confident is our biggest number, 69, kind of neutral and not confident, 24. And really, thanks for admitting anyone who's really not confident. I understand. I thought that for a long time, I actually didn't feel that confident in teaching play skills. So I was in this position where I was seeing the importance of them, but I didn't always feel like I had the tools in my tool belt, if you know what I mean, if I had these good strategies. What I found about play is, like, I think in our practice, we can learn from what play actually is, which is like collaborative, enjoying yourself, you know. And I have a speech and language pathologist coming in the chat saying play gives the best results. Absolutely. We get the child having fun. They don't even know they're learning. Okay. But I think that, you know, back to what I was saying in terms of how we talk about play and how we learn how to teach play even more ourselves, because we are always learning. Yeah, so we can look at a collaborative approach. For example, you know, we used to at networking events in the UK, we talked a lot about how we could maybe share resources, and we never ended up formalizing it. But that's an idea I've had for a long time, is that we could have kind of a database of play resources, you know, with scripts and video models. And of course, people don't have a lot of time, but I think it's a really good thing to put out to the world, these open access resources. And I know we have a new chapter coming in the UAE, so there'll be an associated website, and I'd be happy to try and support putting lots of play resources up there. But let me get on with it for now. Sorry, I did see a chat question coming in. Someone said beyond 48 months. Yeah, you might have heard I've been saying that what I'm talking about today is kind of relevant up to about age 12. But if you have an older person who has quite a young mental age, or is maybe lower ability, then feel free to use any of the strategies here, okay? So Smita thank you so much, Smita, in the chat, saying you thought play would be the easiest to teach and it's the most difficult. Absolutely, because we think, well, I'm fun, I like to play with kids like me, you know, fun auntie and all that. But yeah, tough skill to teach, it really can be. Okay, because I have a mixed group today and I really want everyone to have a benefit. So everyone for whom this is revision, hopefully you can have some patience for a minute. And for people who are not used to a behavioral approach to teaching or to teaching play, I'm just going to give you a little bit of terminology so you won't be lost. And then also, if there's something I'm saying that sounds a bit technical or you would like clarified, feel free to message Dr. Michelle directly. You'll see Michelle Kelly there. So back to what I'm saying is that, yeah, you can ask Michelle directly, and she might, just if there's a little bit of kind of technical language or something. So obviously keep putting things in the chat and I'll address them as I go. As long as we know this, I think you can actually understand nearly everything else I'm going to say. So reinforcement is where something happens after a behavior occurs, and it increases the likelihood that that behavior will occur again in the future under similar circumstances. That's it. Okay. When you do something and something you like happens afterwards, you're probably more likely to do that again. Now, we don't say reinforcement has occurred unless we actually see the increase in behavior in the future. Okay. But basically, when we think about reinforcement, something follows a behavior, it's a consequence to the behavior. That means the behavior is more likely in the future. What is that consequence? It's a reinforcer. So these are things: toys, food, cuddles, rough and tumble play, high five, sensory items, balloons, bubbles. These are all things that we can use as reinforcers to increase the play and verbal responding that we need. Okay, so if a child is, you know, if I'm trying to get a child to play maybe with a car garage and they run the car down, and I blow some bubbles afterwards and give a big cheer, and the child really has fun with that, then they're more likely to engage in this behavior of rolling the car again. Okay, so now we know what reinforcers are. Sometimes we need to learn to identify them, which I'm going to come to shortly. But first, this is our groundwork, okay? Now, again, anyone who's gone through an ABA course sequence will know about pairing and conditioning reinforcers. But what does it actually mean when it comes to play? And what is the first thing we need to do to just take stock and say, right, we're going to put in the groundwork now, and then our programs later on are going to be even more successful. So we create a fun environment. Okay, so pairing really just means that you become reinforcing by being associated with lots of reinforcement. So you're a fun person, okay? So if the child likes rough and tumble play, we get down on their level and play. So we're just talking in the chat there about pairing with toys, okay? That is way, way, way on. Well, not way, but this is much more important. We're now pairing an environment or a location and ourselves, okay? The parent, the teacher, the tutor, whoever that is. And we could be doing this with multiple people, ideally. So this is about following the child. No demands. If you put in demands, we call you a play destroyer or a buzzkill if you're in Ireland, okay? So if a child is sort of playing happily, even if it's in a stereotyped manner, and you go in and you say, you must do it this way, you're killing the fun. You're killing the whole purpose of play to begin with, okay? So we might identify an area for pure fun. And when we're here, all we do is play. Okay, there's a beanbag, we might put a little barrier around or cushions around so that we know this is the space. Of course, we want to move out of that and generalize to new areas, but at the start, maybe this is a good thing to do. So we're creating this fun environment. We're following the things that the child really likes to do. Again, don't be a play destroyer. The child might actually need to get used to having you in their space, because they might have this area that they go to and they just like to do their few little routines. You know, you can't just push in on that. So you need to be really careful about teaching the child to know, first, maybe they have to actually tolerate you in their space, okay? The aim at this point is the child should be having more fun in your presence than in your absence. So they're like, oh, she's coming. This is about to get even more fun. Okay, I have a question in the chat about stereotypy, and I think I'm not quite there yet to answer that question. I think so it will be coming up and I will talk about it, but right now we don't care about stereotypy. We're just talking about pairing, remember? So we haven't started teaching play, we haven't started doing anything yet. We are doing this work that will pay off later. Okay, and it means when we want to look at play as an incompatible behavior to stereotypy, for example, that our play interventions are going to be more successful because we've done this hard work. So I really can't overestimate the importance of this stage, and it's really tempting to rush it, especially those of us who've ever worked in the home. If you're getting paid to go to someone's home and all you're doing is on the ground having a great time, that can be really hard for parents to understand, especially if they're stretching their budget to pay you. We must make it really clear. The evidence shows that we must pair in advance. We must do this groundwork. And we also must show parents how to do this groundwork. Okay, we must have parents, we must empower parents to find their inner fun side, right? Someone talked earlier in the chat, you know, parents don't have time. I empathize and I understand that, I really do, but we've got to find this inner child in ourselves and really get stuck in and get into the child's level, down on their level, and playing with whatever it is that's going to make them laugh, okay? So I'm speaking to the parents and the practitioners, but I'm also telling the practitioners, you must encourage parents to do this as well. So it must be happening in a clinic or school setting and also at home for kind of our best optimal outcomes and for generalization, which means we are playing in multiple different areas and with lots of different toys, hopefully. So if your aim is, I want this child to have more fun because I'm here, let's have a think about it. What could you actually do? Can you tell me in the chat, how can you make a child, if a child is playing maybe in a dysfunctional way, or maybe they only play with one toy, or maybe they have a lot of sensory play, how can you make this more fun? How can you say, hey, let me join in? Let's think about maybe even some rough and tumble play with the little one. Yeah, you can follow the interest initially, absolutely, but now you got to make those things more fun. Enthusiasm, motivation, I love it. Yeah. You have to be silly. I'm sorry. Right now, and I really like that, you know, model toy play, but right, that's a demand. Okay. And at this stage, we're not going to be, okay, we can show, but, you know, oh, look, the car's crashed. Whoa. However, we don't want to put any demands. So I'm not actually going to force the child or prompt the child or anything to copy my actions at this point. You'll see later, I'll come to that. Great suggestions there. Bring in the new toys. And just follow what they like at the start, definitely. Don't say, oh, you are engaging in stereotypy with this Thomas the Tank Engine toy, I'm going to take it away. No, go with the flow. See, how can I make Thomas more fun? Can I blow bubbles on him? All of these things. Yeah, really good. So we're at a very early stage. Well done bringing the toys they like. Super duper, brilliant. So this pairing procedure, okay, and just show your excitement, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes you can be doing like a cause and effect toy or something, and then the child will actually approach you. That's great. Okay, be the one to give them the things they love. They have the favorite toy, great, hand it to them. Now you're associated with it, great. Be involved, something funny in a hairband, love it. The sillier, the better, and I really want to empower us to find our inner child, like I said. Narrate their play. Oh, you're playing with the red car. Oh, the teddy is so cozy. The dolly loves to eat this. All these kind of things. Make silly noises. Gotta be done, guys. Play side by side. Again, no demands. I can't say this enough. The activity must be more fun because you're there. Okay, so they're playing with trains. You say, yeah, blue train. Blue train. What a fun choice. Give reinforcers and toys for free. I love it. Absolutely. Hand over those toys. Bring your bubbles and your balloons, all the bees and your blocks. Build up your tower and knock it down. All of this stuff. Right. Paper plane. Oh, you guys are amazing. Okay. And then you can, so adding on here, you can choose your own. Either make your noises. Okay. We're all on the same page here. One more piece of groundwork that you may or may not be familiar with is this process of establishing faces as a reinforcer. Why faces? Because we want children to look at us during play, because we later want them to look at their peers. We want them to look at something and look to us for enjoyment, to see if we're looking. That's joint attention. We want them to look at something and then smile up at us like, did you see it too? We want them to look at our faces so they can copy our expressions and they can copy our oral motor shapes for our words. That eye contact, of course, which is important for conversation later. You know what, though? I think that we can actually sometimes just compromise a little bit and not require full eye contact. If they're orienting towards my face, I'm happy. Okay. Again, we want them looking at our mouth so they can copy shapes and we can get those early oral motor activities underway. Okay, then also just this shared enjoyment, copying your expression. Did you see that? If they're not looking at you, they don't see it. So if faces are conditioned as a reinforcer, what that means is the child will want to look at faces because they're associated with reinforcement. And that means that later on, they'll be able to look at faces and see the different expressions. So I hope I've made the case for why we should do this. It's a really easy process. And this, I should say, is adapted from Doug Greer and colleagues. They do this all the time in their CABIS schools. So we have the child sit across from you at the table, on the floor. It can be on your knee, especially if it's your own child. You ring a bell or do something like this right by your eyes so that they kind of have to look. They're like, what's going on there? timer, bell, whatever you have, use what you have. The child is going to look because they're like, what is that? And as soon as they look, doesn't have to be eye contact. Remember, we're not obsessed with eye contact anymore. We want orientation towards the face. Okay? Doesn't have to be full eye contact. Here we go. Start to sing a preferred song. Now, if you're a terrible, terrible, terrible singer, you can press play on your iPhone, right? But if you're an okay singer and the child is at least going to be able to enjoy, we start singing. As soon as they look away, we stop. And then we go again. We go, woo, 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 ring a bell, they look, and we start with our, you know, wheels on the bus go round and round. See, I can't sing it all, but I'm not afraid to look silly. Okay, as soon as the child looks away, we stop. What happens? They're back, right? So this works really, really well. If you're a parent, I release you from the stopwatch, but it might be good to see how long they will look at your face for. So, like I've said, stop singing and stop the stopwatch. Record the duration of looking. We're looking for about 20 seconds. That's what Doug Greer says. If a child will actually look at your face while you kind of sing or make faces, that's a really good thing. And they have a really good chance of being able to, you know, get a good read on expressions, to be able to attend to you enough to copy your words and your expressions. Of course, repeat with different people. Okay. And actually, Dr. Michelle and I played peekaboo. Beautiful idea. Yeah. Make faces fun. Why would I want to look at a face? All they do is just give me instructions and tell me what to do and scowl at me. No, we want to look at faces because that's when the good stuff happens. Okay. And I saw a beautiful presentation. I was at Behavior Momentum India conference in January, and Dr. Amaris Tapulia, who is a wonderful behavior analyst and has some children with autism, she gave an amazing workshop and she showed pictures and videos of her children. And really, you could see this, her daughter was playing with her dad, kind of tickling and having fun in the kitchen. And then he sort of stops and she looks right up at him. You know, a person who would have had a lot of skills deficits as a child, she looks right at him. And then he starts again, because what Amaris said was all through their childhood, even if she's giving them a sweet, she goes like this. They look at the face, you deliver. Okay. Someone said about calling name. I don't want that because the name is the prompt. I want to walk in a room and the child looks to see who I am. And if you've walked in a lot of rooms of children with autism, that doesn't always happen. But thank you for the questions. And actually, I really want to see a decrease in all this name calling. So if I'm saying Mary, 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 Mary doesn't have to come the first time. She knows I'm going to stand here and wait for her, you know? And so we get this over prompting situation, and we can have this kind of chain of behaviors where they don't do anything unless their name is called, okay? So look, you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this. I think this is really, really important. So during play, and I'll show you a couple of different tricks and examples as well, but you know, if the child is bouncing on your lap, you stop. You wait, and then they look and go, why did she stop? As soon as they look at you, you go again. So whatever it is that's fun, you're blowing bubbles, wait till you get that look at your face, you blow the bubbles. Okay, if you can get in the habit of this, especially the parents among us, it's not so much hard work. There's a lot of things teachers and consultants are going to ask you to do that's much harder work than this. Okay, beautiful. Enas, I think you want to be the signal that something good is about to happen. Yeah. So I want us to just take, you know, 30 seconds yourself. You can share if you like, but this is really for yourself to just focus us a little bit. What is the toy you're learning? The child, or just pick maybe one child in your class if it's not your son or daughter. Just pick it, write down the toy the learner plays with most often, and one or two toys that you would like them to play with. Okay, and we'll come back to this. The dinosaur, yeah, that's a common one. I know we have a lot of people from the Middle East here, and you do have Thomas the Train, I believe my students call it, but Thomas the Tank Engine, my goodness, I've seen so many children completely obsessed. Okay, Play-Doh, great, love it. I see lots of messy play. We're going to be friends, I can tell. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some strategies. Okay, and now that I see, yes, slime, all this cool stuff, kinetic sand, love it. Okay. Next question, would you mind just putting a few things in the chat for me about the type of strategies that you've used to teach play skills, just so I know where you're coming from. I guess, probably prompting, shaping, do you use scripts or schedules, imitation, beautiful. Okay, so you might see that some of this in the, oh yeah, no problem. You might see that some of my strategies here, you might say, oh, I already know how to do that. So bear with us, give us your feedback. And the other thing is that hopefully I'll give you some ideas to just think outside the box a little bit. And also for the consultants and teachers and tutors amongst us, I hope maybe I can give you some ideas for how you can help support parents going forward. Okay, these are the 5 things I'm going to talk about. Discrete trial with prompts but can feel unnatural. Oh yes, I can see we're all definitely going to be friends, right? We're all on the same page here. So we have lots of strategies, but sometimes our discrete trials can feel a bit robotic, a bit unnatural. So hopefully I can help you with that a little bit today. We must know what the child likes and what the child is going to find fun. So we want to know what kind of reinforcers we can use to deliver, to increase the play behaviors that we want to see more of. Okay, so you might know a few things the child likes. We want to see which will work as a reinforcer to strengthen our play and our verbal repertoires. So one way is a preference assessment, and anyone, again, who is a behavior analyst will know lots of different ways to do this. Okay, but our preference and our motivation can change, especially with the little ones. The thing that they were obsessed with yesterday is now old news. So I'm going to show you a brief, just in the moment option. It's not a revelation for a lot of you, but that would be convenient for you. So these are just the type of things. I don't want anyone to think that they have to have lots of very expensive toys. Children will play with a box, as you know, right? I'm a fan of inexpensive toys that you can do fun things with. So all of these squidgies, and you can see I have a lot of kind of sensory sounds and things like that. Bubbles. I mean, I am a big fan. Bubbles allow you to do an awful lot. Empty water bottles, absolutely. And then people put glitter in them and things like that. Okay, so maybe something like this. I'm just trying to show you some ideas. Here is my simple preference assessment that you can do several times a day. So pick 4 items, okay? And try to have different 4 items each day, but also, at least 3 of them should be things that are the type of things you think they'll like, okay? Sorry, that's a very long-winded sentence. So pick 2 things, say, okay, which one, or pick one. Child picks the bubbles, blow a few bubbles, put the 2 things away, hold up 2 different items. Oh, which one, pick one, something like that. Nice, simple, direct language. Now they've picked this ball run. So let them maybe roll a ball or 2 down it. Do give a little bit of access to it. And then what do? Now we pick the top 2. And now we say which one. So now we've got the 2 winners, and we're going to see which one do they really like. And we see here the ball one is the winner. Kids will have tantrums when they remove them. If you've done your pairing, your first groundwork, that is less likely to happen. If you're removing toys and they're getting very upset, there might be a learning history of, toys being removed and then being put straight back to work. Anyone can have a tantrum if something they like is removed, but I find when you have done the pairing and the groundwork properly, you are giving a little bit of access. And what are you doing? You're just giving the 2 of them back anyway. So while I know that can happen, do your pairing, build that relationship if you like. Personalized box of reinforcers, happiness box, beautiful. I love it. But you know what? If we're now going to run a little play session, I might just want to pick one toy to work with, or I might want to just have one very strong reinforcer, because I don't always need to vary them. So if I have a child maybe playing with this train set and they pick this ball run, I might do like train, ball down, train, ball down. Okay, so it's really good to know what is going to motivate the child the most in that moment. I might do 5 minutes and then run this again. 2, 2, 2. Okay, now we're playing with the bubbles, super duper. Okay, I find it's really quick, especially with the younger ones, to just kind of see, are we still motivated for this item? Okay, you can repeat this with edible items too. So you could have a batch of tangible or toy reinforcers and a batch of edible reinforcers for kind of extra motivation. Use small pieces and to pick up that point, you are not going to have them pick it and then not be allowed to eat it. If they select it, they're eating it. Okay. And then we can use these edibles to build on the play with the toys. Again, we want to engage as much as possible, funny noises, songs, things like that. Okay, so now we want to, Ines, I believe in the chat, sorry, your name just came up fleeting there and it's not one I'm familiar with, but you're reading my mind. We can pair, we're back to pairing again. You might think this lady is obsessed with pairing. You'd probably be right, okay? So we can use existing reinforcers to build new ones. So if we have toys that the child doesn't care about, we can use the things they do like to make these other ones what we might call neutral at this point, to make them more reinforcing, to make them more appealing or exciting, okay? So we know that something can become a reinforcer when it is repeatedly paired or presented alongside an existing reinforcer, okay? So what do I mean by this? Oh, actually, I'm moving on there. So is there anything? Yeah, so we could just do this like a repeated presentation. So for example, if the child really loves Thomas and we want them to play with a garage, I might now start putting Thomas down the ramp in the garage. The earlier we get in with these kind of repertoires, the better, because we don't want to build this rigidity that, you know, Thomas only goes on this one track. From the outset, we should be trying to mix things up, and I'll talk a little bit about that more shortly. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on my time. Okay, so the next thing we can do is use what we call the Premax principle, or Dr. Michelle calls it Grandma's rule. I love it. So we use a preferred item activity as a reinforcer or a consequence for engaging with the non-preferred. So here I'm talking, when I talk about pairing, I'm talking about delivering them together, making them associated, putting a sweet in the doll's house so they find it, making something reinforcing, okay? This is different. So this is where we're delivering reinforcement for engaging with a particular toy, and then that engagement increases in the future, okay? So here we might have, you can even have like a first end schedule. So we play with the numbers for like a second at the start or 2 seconds, and then we have the fun thing. And then we build up the time with the first thing and decrease the time with the second thing. The other thing we can do is we can directly reinforce this repertoire of trying new things. And for those of us who work with children on the autism spectrum, we know that this can be difficult. So children with autism may have a very limited group of toys they'll play with. I've seen children who only just have one toy that they engage in stereotypy with. They just spin the wheels on the car, for example. With the toys that they play with, they can have limited repertoires, okay? So they really only do roll over and back repeatedly, spinning the wheels, those kind of things, right? What we can do is we can directly reinforce trying new things. So the first thing we want is to increase the selection of toys that they'll play with, right? Or the range of toys they'll play with. So we could have, if I'm trying to work on this, I might have my little bowl of edible reinforcers, whether they're chocolate buttons broken up or grapes or blueberries chopped up or strawberries, whatever it is. I might use those, and every time I see a child picking up a different toy, I'm going to deliver that edible reinforcement. Wow, you're trying new things. Remember, the goal is to expand this range of items and actions, okay? So we can make this more formal, and anyone who wants to learn more is free to email me. Actually, Dr. Michelle might put my email in the chat there if you wouldn't mind. We can make this more formal and deliver reinforcement on what we call a lag 2 schedule. So if you're not into behavior analysis per se, you can just switch off for maybe 10 seconds. But if we use a lag schedule arrangement, it means we deliver reinforcement if a selection of a toy differs from maybe the previous 2 toys they engaged with. There's a really nice study that Russ Lang and colleagues just put out where they used a lag 1 schedule in the playground. So every time the child moved to a new piece of equipment, they gave them some edible reinforcement, and it worked really nicely. They started playing with more things, not just going up and down the slide again and again and again. However, you know, neurotypical children will go down a slide repeatedly. So again, we don't want to, you know, make problems where there aren't any. But if I have a child who goes to a playground and only plays with one thing, I do want to expand the range of this out. Okay, so I've had a question there about groups, and as you can see, we're at a very early stage here. At this stage, when you're just pairing and increasing the range of toys, you are nowhere near ready for the child to play in a group. Okay, and actually putting them in at this stage, there's no harm if they're in a play group and they trying to follow along, or maybe they're doing independent play. I'm not saying the children shouldn't be in a group, but I would not be trying to teach group play or cooperative play at this point. You're setting everybody up for failure because the prerequisites are not there. Okay, so we can have if we want to formalize and use like 2 or 3 schedules, that can work really, really nicely. And I'm happy to share some literature. And that's actually the topic of my own research program at the moment and in my PhD. So always happy to talk about it. However, this is really easy too. My second point, just identify the toy or the toys that they play with the most, and then reinforce them engaging with any other toy. Okay, so even if they just pick it up for a second and put it down again, wow, you tried something different, way to go, you're doing new things, all of that. Okay, and this for our early learners, this can actually be tricky. So I don't want to be here and say just do this and it will all be fixed. A lot of this takes patience. With some of our learners, we're going to be in this stage for quite some time. Okay, but you must establish yourself as a reinforcer. Okay, we must have the child tolerating us in their play space, and we must increase the range of toys that they play with. We can't do a lot if they will only play with Thomas the Tank. There's only so much I can do on that track. Okay, so these foundational skills are really, really important. Okay. I just put up a picture here. I had it from a previous presentation, and it's just a nice sample of the types of toys that are useful for. The reason I like these type of toys is because they're for younger children, but they have older themes. So if you have someone who, if you want it to be a little bit more age appropriate, these type of toys are good. Just make sure with your learners that you're choosing toys that don't have pieces that can come off because they can be swallowed and things like that. So safety first. But for example, if I put these type of a group of toys like this, and the child just goes to the car and only plays with the car, as soon as they touch that dinosaur, I'm going to give edible reinforcement and high fives and praise. But in the meantime, while the child is kind of fixated on the car, I'm going to be stomping that dinosaur around and doing lots of fun stuff. There's a swing there and opening and closing doors. So like you were saying earlier, it's kind of modeling, but the child may not be imitating at this point. But let's get their interest to say, well, I want to play with the dinosaur. And then it's like, yeah, you tried something new. Okay. So this is what we're trying to do all the time. We're trying to use existing reinforcers to condition new ones or pair them. We want to reinforce all engagement with different toys, okay? And then just to come back, it seems like a long time ago since I talked about Charlotte Badal's table, but when I had that table of the very detailed breakdown of the types of play, these were the first 2, okay? And increasing the range of toys and the other strategies I've just talked about are essential for sensory motor play. So for example, that might be just children putting things in their mouths and exploring. However, some of our children on the spectrum will only do that with 1 or 2 items. They're not checking things out. They're not sampling in the same way. Okay, so actually increasing the diversity or variation in the toys that they'll engage with or the items they'll engage with is really important for these first 2 stages. So we go from sensory motor, which is just kind of going, what's going on here and feeling it, to object exploration. So seeing, reaching, and then manipulating in some way. Okay, so you can see I'm still at a very early stage here. So let's refer to our list. I won't take long because I do want to get all the way up through the stages. But I think it would be useful for you now just to show that you're gaining something from this, to see, is there any of those things that you could do? Could you use pairing from the original toy to the new toy? Can you embed new toys into existing activities? If you want to type in the chat, that would be great, but I think it'd be useful for yourself to reflect for a second now. And while you do that, I'm just going to check that I'm up to date with the chat. Okay, preference changes a lot. Brilliant. with music, love it. Preference changes, go back to your brief preference assessment that I showed you. Okay, so we're trying to condition new toys all the time, but in the moment, we get 4 different toys. You get two, and then check the winners, and that's now your reinforcer. Have a tea party, beautiful. I put little strawberries in the bowls and things like that. Okay, use pairing and be fun, right? Okay, yeah, so you can, you know, do the rough and tumble, so lifting the child up and do mind your back, of course, but you know, it's about being as fun as possible and then bringing in the toys. And if you're already fun, then to see you playing with the toys is going to be fun. Sound effects, yes, love it. Right, next thing I want to talk about, teaching imitation, how to do this through play. But this is a prerequisite, because you want to, if you want to start teaching functional play, which is just, you know, like using items in the way they were designed, like a tea set, for example, imitation is going to really help you. So you can't use modeling if the child can't imitate. Okay, so it will take a lot of repetition. That's okay. We've got time. We're having fun. Use reinforcers, right? We know how to identify those now. Do a brief preference assessment. Restrict access prior to the session. You create an abolishing operation. You increase the value of these items. Think about it. You haven't had chocolate in a week. What do you want? You want chocolate, right? So that's if you're a chocolate person, of course. So we can restrict access to these items. So to me, teaching a child how to imitate is so important, okay? And I really want us to allow time for that in our playtime and outside, okay? So use your best reinforcers. You can, modeling includes video modeling. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just mention video modeling for about half a second later on. However, if a child can't like watch and copy, then video modeling isn't going to be very useful. Okay, so we can teach imitation without toys. I'm not sure about withdrawing toys. I mean, I think you mean during the preference assessment, and I think I've already addressed that. So we do our pairing, and if we're removing toys, we're putting other ones back in. Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry, restricting access to these items. If it's something that like your child is really not going to be able to cope without, then don't restrict access right now, because obviously you might want to restrict it a little bit for like academic programs later on. But, you know, I'm not going to say take away their favorite teddy that they need to go to sleep. No way. However, if they love grapes, strawberries, whatever, dates, then, you know, just don't give them that morning, or don't give them in the day before the session. So now they're like, I'd love some of those. Okay. If it's a toy, just keep the most valuable one if you can. Just put it up higher away so they'll forget about it if you can. Or maybe we don't have free access in the morning. Maybe they go out to school, and then when they come home, they're like, oh yeah, I wanted that toy. Okay. So I hope I answered your question. Sorry if I misunderstood there at the start. So we can teach imitation without toys, but where is the fun in that? So let's look at it with toys. So 2 sets of similar materials. Make a list of like 3 to 5 actions. So for very simple, drop the ball in the cup, object imitation. Yeah. So you might be targeting gross motor imitation separately, or you might have already done it. But there's no problem teaching. Yeah, Simon says is great and it's very fun. Well done. But for now, this is one way that we can build those imitation skills. Okay, so 3 to 5 actions. So put the ball in the cup, knock down the blocks, putting one block on top of another. Very simple, not too fine motor. Okay, so we get the child's attention, demonstrate. If they copy, remember, if it's like a spoon stirring a cup, you must have a cup and spoon and they must have a cup and spoon. If it's blocks, knocking them down, build a wall for you and a wall for them. You knock yours. If they copy, celebrate, okay? Yeah, absolutely, we're reinforcing, off we go, okay? So if they don't, that's okay, we're learning. So we might see that they can't do it, so we might build them up again, and we knock, and then we just touch their hand off it so that we're prompting them to do it, and then we say, well, you did it, use some reinforcement, okay? So once they complete the action with assistance, we're delivering the reinforcer. Perfect. Repeat a few times, then do something else and repeat again, and then fade out that reinforcement. And we want to build up the actions. Once they can do one reliably, add the next one in. Okay. The next thing we want to do is simple two-step actions. I wouldn't like to answer, sorry, there's a question there, is it better to teach imitation with or without toys? I would probably do both. I haven't like seen the research that compares, okay? But if I'm doing play, I'm going to be teaching imitation with the toys. Would I target it outside using gross motor, clap hands, wave, those kind of things? Yeah, absolutely, especially if you've got a child on a program, okay? So you have access to them. But if we're playing, I'm not going to build in any of those like other demands. I'm going to be doing it with the items, okay? I can't say like do one over the other, but during play, this is how we do it, okay? And what we're moving to is two-step actions, okay? This is really important. We want to be we want to be able to, you know, do this, roll down the hill, crash. We want those to be we want them to be able to imitate those. Sorry, I have a question in the chat here. The two same toys. Initially, when you're teaching this, excuse me, it's better to have the same toys. Yeah, it's easier for them to imitate when they're the same, okay? But they don't have, if you don't have it, don't worry about it, just go for it with what you have, okay? So then we're also kind of expanding on this. So I'm saying, you know, crash up or something like this. What I want then is I want the child imitating like silly actions. So this is going to be a foundation or a prerequisite for the symbolic play. Oh, do this, and we put something silly on our head, okay? Okay, I have a question in the chat about pretend play looks similar to inappropriate play. The inappropriate plays, I think you're probably going to talk about stereotypy or something like that. I will have something to say about that a little bit later. But, you know, define inappropriate. Unless they're being very destructive, then I don't really mind, because as we're increasing appropriate play, then we should see a concurrent reduction in what we might call inappropriate play. But remember, I don't want us to get too caught up in, you know, they have to look like the neurotypical child. The function of play is to have fun and to eventually be able to interact and do cooperative play, as you'll see when I talk about the later stages of play. However, yeah, I think if they're being destructive, if they're throwing things, if their play is maybe going to be a barrier to other children playing with them later on, or it's causing troubles, or they can't go to an integrated setting, then maybe we want to tackle that. But especially if you're saying it looks similar, then I don't see what the problem is. So I wouldn't worry about that for now, okay? And again, we don't have to say that this is at a certain age. We deal with the stage of the child as we find them, okay? We deal with the stage that we find them at. So that's imitation for now. Okay, so then imitation we can see is going to map onto these things. So simple functional play. If we don't have imitation, then it's going to be very hard to teach these simple functional play actions. And I've seen a lot of children on the autism spectrum who don't do this. Okay, so we can see they're very behind in their play, okay, or their play just looks very different. But in order for us to teach these higher order play skills, the parallel and cooperative play, then we really need to start with this, and we really need to get this right, okay? I just will address a quick question in the chat. When you're teaching imitation, you give the instruction once, then you prompt, okay? So I don't give the instruction again, or the model again and again and again. When we're pairing, that's okay. But if you really are trying to teach imitation, then you do it once. And if they can't do it, then you just give a prompt to say, well, you did it. And then we fade that out, okay? I'm aware that I information for anyone who isn't a behavior analyst, but I'm just hoping that you'll get some useful ideas at the very least. And then those of you who are practitioners, that you can move your practice along a little bit and see where you can make small changes that should make a really big difference. Okay. Then this combination of functional play, two or more objects interacting. And so we'll see how useful it is to look at these stages, because we don't always think about that in our programming. Are they mixing two? Are they actually having things where two items are involved? You know, we might not think that that's so important, but it is a very important stage. So we can teach that if it's not happening naturally. Oh, thank you so much. I just got a lovely reinforcer in the chat. Thank you. So varied actions. Again, you're going to see the things that make me tick and that I always look out for in terms of play. So this variation is really important to me because that's my area of research. But the reason I research it is because I believe it's really important in terms of play. So we don't want to see children play in a very repetitive manner. So this maybe goes back to the question about inappropriate play. Instead of though getting very worried about that, we don't want to, interrupt all the time, or we don't want to be very punitive or be like, you need to stop doing that. No, we want to show a better way. Okay, so we want to shape a better way. So we're always looking for novelty, the first time they did something, or variation, just doing lots of different things. And then you offer your very best reinforcers when you see it. So you might be down and rough and tumble and engaging in lots of different toys and having a great time, and the child's engaged, and then they do something that you've never seen them do before. That's when I'm reaching for the bubbles, I'm running to get the chocolate, I'm running to give the best, or I'm marching around the kitchen, whatever is super reinforcing for the child. If I see a child play with a new toy for the first time, or really kind of engage in a different way with a toy for the first time, I am giving them everything I've got in terms of reinforcement, because I want to shape that. I want to select it out so that I see more of it. So once the child can imitate actions, we start working on variation, trying something new, modeling something new, reinforcing them doing something new. Okay. So again, we can go back to lag schedules and be very formal about it. So they need to have an action that differs from the previous two. If you're a parent, take my word for it, you don't need to go to this level of analysis. However, if you want to actually formalize an intervention using lag schedules, you can do it in this way. And just look at the research. There's loads on play recently. Every time you see a novel action, maybe that you've never seen before, like I said, large reinforcer. These are the superstar reinforcers. Got a question there. One chair after another. Yeah. Okay, lining up a repetitive movement. Okay, so, oh, sorry, I don't think you can all see it. A child puts a chair one after another. Can we consider it pretend play? So you can model being in a car, pretend to be a driver and passenger, or is it just lining up a repetitive movement? Yeah, I mean, if they're lining up chairs, that sounds a little bit like it's part of this restricted and repetitive pattern of behaviors that we see so commonly in autism. However, I think you've just done exactly the right thing. Jump in, make it fun. And now how can we mix it up a bit? Can we put one chair over there? Can we mix in something different and then reinforce people tolerating that? It's like with the blocks. I've seen people only build one color. If we can get in really as early as we can when we're teaching play skills and actually reinforce inserting different colors or trying different colors. I've worked with children where, they might have a white tower of Lego or Duplo, the big Lego, and I'll just pick the top off and put a blue one in and then reinforce. And they're like, I'm not so sure about this, but I like the jelly tot or the button or the bubbles, even better. If you don't want to use junk food as edible reinforcers, you don't have to. Bubbles and balloons and things are great. Okay, so I don't want to go off topic. Apologies, it's a bad trait of mine. So we're selecting out by reinforcing this variation. So always looking out for something new. You can be programming for this from the very start. Always giving praise when they try new things. Again, like I said, mixing up those blocks and giving reinforcement. Sorry. Oh, yes. So we show differences in tone and affect, okay? So we want to use what we call differential reinforcement. So when the child is just repeating actions and it looks inappropriate to us, don't give praise, busy yourself with something else, or maybe you're excited about something else over here. And when they try something new, now we're like, whoa, okay? How silly can you be? And can the child imitate your silliness? We're all having fun. One thing we can do, if we're seeing very serious stereotypy, if, for example, the only thing a child will do is maybe banging this, they won't try any new toys, they're completely engrossed in a stereotyped behavior, okay? Again, I'm not going to do this right away. But if we do want to interrupt that stereotypy, we can use what's called response interruption and redirection. I got another reinforcer in the chat. It's great, thank you. Response interruption and redirection just means, so if the child is very engrossed or very engaged in stereotypy, we can interrupt the behavior and guide to a different response and reinforce immediately. Okay. Another thing we can do, again, I don't want to cause a major tantrum, especially at home with people who, you know, aren't trained to deal with this. You know, if you can, if there's a toy being used for stereotypy, can you just take it out of their hands and put another one in right away? That sometimes really does work, okay? I don't want to do any major response blocking or physical guidance. If it's your child, you know, maybe you can just guide the hands down and guide them to something else, okay? So we're not just stopping something, we're redirecting all the time, okay? So we redirect to something else, maybe something that they like, you know? The other thing, like I'm saying here, so we take away the toy which is being used for stereotypy, and then they engage with a different toy, and then we give the original one back. Go for it. Do your worst. Have all the stereotypy you want. Now let's see, can we play with something else a bit more appropriately and use the original toy as a reinforcer. So now what have we been doing here? So those kind of things, increasing variation, for example, that's now going to be a foundational or prerequisite skill for teaching functional or what we call pre-symbolic play. So this is like functional play is using the toy in a way that the toy represents. So if it's a doll and a tea set, you're feeding the doll, you're putting sand in the bucket of the dump truck, like in their example. Now, symbolic, sometimes called imaginative or pretend play, is using the car as if it was something else. So, or using anything as if it was something else. So using a book as a race car ramp, saying the toy oven or the toy cooker, being like, oh, it's hot, hot, hot. When it's not, that's your imagination, okay? And we can see the third one here, dramatic or self-pretend play, pretending to be something or someone else. I'm a superhero, I'm a dragon, I'm a horse, okay? If you are very, very rigid, if you only play with one toy, if you have a very rigid set of behavior patterns or rituals with toys, all of these things are going to be quite difficult. The functional might be okay, but we want to have functional play with lots of different toys. So that's where the problem comes in. Okay, so yeah, that's all I have to say on that for now. I hope you can see how the strategies are helping us at each of the developmental stages. We want to, of course, we all want more language in anyone who has language delays, okay? Try and do as much as you can through play. There are some exercises that your SLP will give you or your OT will give you. And if we can even embed those into play activities, then you're going to be much more successful because they're not going to be so aversive. Communication temptation. Anyone who's worked with a more VB approach might have seen this. This just tells me everything we need to know, okay? We need to follow the child's motivation. We need to create motivation. They need to be tempted to communicate. If a child isn't learning their language through observational learning like their peers, then something is difficult for them, okay? So we know that we have very high motivation during play. So if the child's enjoying themselves, we might just like pick up the toy. We know they're enjoying it. We might say, car. And the child says, here you go, lovely talking. Okay, very basic stuff. What are we going to say? Crash, ready, steady, go. All of these things, motivation is very, very high. So here are my top examples. Your child on a knee or a small trampoline, bounce. And we're saying these words. We're saying bounce, bounce, bounce. And then we stop and the child is like, I want this to continue. And sometimes we might just get like some little small vocalization, like an ah sound. Or sometimes they'll actually go, buh. And then what do? I'd say you can guess. As soon as we get this vocalization, and remember, we're looking, and because we've already conditioned our face, the child is looking at us. As soon as we get a vocalization, bounce, 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 bounce. Okay, same with the trampoline. You can hold their hands and then you can kind of hold them still. And we're like, okay, bounce. And off we go again. Okay, motivation is high. And remember, we're bouncing contingent or dependent on the verbal response, whatever it is that they're able for. It can be pointing. It can be a sound, a first syllable of a word like ba, picture exchange, sign, the full word, whatever the child can give me. When it's during play, I am reinforcing all attempts at communication. Manding, absolutely, that is a mand. If they're saying bounce, that's a mand for you to continue. But you're using like almost a behavioral momentum strategy to get that mand or the request. This one I love, right? So you push a child in the swing and then you behave like a terrible person and you hold them back at what I call the sweet spot. That little girl is there right now. Okay. So when we're pushing, we're saying push and the child's laughing. The child loves it. Okay. Now we're holding. That's the highest motivation you're going to get all day. The child is like, why is the swing stopped? Okay. Now help them along. Say push or puh or whatever the prompt you're going to give. And then as soon as they say the word or maybe make a sound, whatever they're able to do, then of course we can't do picture exchange or sign right now. But let's say they just give you a vocalization. We say, wow, nice talking. You said push. Okay. And these are, yeah, somebody likes my examples. Great. I've been many years gathering them, let me tell you. But yeah, if you hold the child there, just picture it yourself. You're like giddy with excitement. Okay. At that point, that is the best motivation you're going to get all day. Okay. Let's just reflect so I can make sure that you're getting something useful. Could you say one way we can use this communication temptation, or you can call it a motivating operation or an establishing operation if you want to use technical language. I am more than happy with communication temptation. But how can we set up our home so that we get a little bit more of this high motivation for language? Water play activity, beautiful. Yeah. And so you set up the water table and they know it's coming, right? And what do? You might have the tap or the jug, whatever you're using. Motivation is high. Food, yeah. So what do we want? We want more toast or whatever the case may be. Yeah, super duper, well done. Kind of sensory stuff. Yeah, even the rough and tumble. So doing lots of tickles and things like that, parent and child, and then you hold back. And the child sometimes, and you'll see this with very small babies, actually, they kind of go, and you're right back in. Okay, so great idea in the chat, well done. Just a few more, make your favorite items inaccessible. So if you have baked some cookies and the child can smell them and all of that, we could maybe put them up high so the child must ask for them. Peekaboo is beautiful, yeah, really engaging. Create the need for assistance. Maybe the child has a toy that they need assistance to work. Maybe you got to turn something on. Opening a container that has a toy in it, giving something with missing pieces out of reach. All of this, we're not trying to be mean, terrible people, but we're trying to create the motivation so the child can see what they want and it's got to come through you so that we, and they have communication. A mystery bag is genius. So we get all of the mans there, open it and give me and all of those things. They can man for the bag, of course, first, bean bags, all of those, right? I can see you're all very experienced at teaching play. Offer something the child doesn't want and then prompt them to say no. So I'd give them something like really crappy, like a bit of paper, although they might like it, but then I'd be like, oh, here you go. And I want them to say, no, not that one. Okay, so we want to prompt all of that. Wrong item, just being silly and going the wrong way and doing the wrong thing. And they say, no. Okay. Here we go. Those that verbal behavior, even if we're just increasing the verbal repertoire a small bit, it's all going to help with this more social stage of behavior. Okay. So now we can see we're getting more complex. Parallel play, an important skill, saying no, absolutely. Yeah, we try and teach that early on and stop those kind of things. Okay, for now, parallel play, they're playing alongside another child. And it is important that they're there next to each other, even though they don't interact. And it's fascinating to see. I'd say you've all seen it, but I remember learning about this stuff. And then my sister started having kids. So I was like seeing more playgrounds and things like this. And I was like, oh, it really is parallel play. Two kids, age 2 or 3 maybe, and they're both playing on a toy cooker. They don't interact at all. They're so busy, the two of them. They're doing the same thing. It's important for their development that they're with the other person, but it's not interactive. And actually, this is the stage that I'm guilty of skipping in my programming when I was working on play. And even when I was doing more consultant type roles, I must admit, I didn't always put enough focus on parallel play. And the more I go on, the more I think that actually we should be starting this. So once we know that they can do some object imitation, once we know that they have a few different toys they can play with and they can do a few different play sequences. So if you've got a garage, the car goes down the ramp and it drives along and it crashes with another one, or the little woman figurine goes into the car. We want a few little sequences like that before we start introducing peers. Okay, and depending on who you read or talk to, they'll say different things, but I would say they should be able to spend, 3 to 5 minutes playing with toys. It can be a range of toys, and they should be doing quite a few different things with them, so not just stereotypy. So some people say if they have play routines of like 3 to 5 actions, no, 3 to 5 minutes, 5 actions, okay? So you'll know yourself, but just don't do this too early, although you can't do much damage with parallel play. It's just when you're forcing the cooperative play when they're not ready, it becomes very aversive. And then peers can become aversive, and we really, really don't want that. Yeah, I mean, to answer the question in the chat, is this suitable for all types of children? Like, the thing is that when what you're looking at here is a typical trajectory. These are the stages of play that almost all neurotypical children who don't have a diagnosis will go through, okay? However, when we're teaching play to children who have developmental delays, for children who don't play in this way, who don't follow this sequence, it is useful for us to refer back to this sequence. So we see what to teach, and we start with prerequisites, start with foundation skills, and then build and build and build. In the old days, we used to push children on too quickly and not consider that they hadn't learned the foundational skills, and all of a sudden we want them all to play these complex turn-taking games, and we wonder why they hit their peer or throw the game or just run away. Okay, so everything that I'm talking about is absolutely tailored for children who don't play in the typical way. Yeah, so whatever the diagnosis is, I'm hoping that you should be able to adapt or use pretty much everything I'm talking about. And some children won't need the actual intensity. You can see in the early part where I'm talking about those interventions and the pairing, it does seem targeted towards maybe a lower ability or a younger child. But that's where your assessment comes in. So if you know that the child already plays with a lot of different toys and can do lots of different things, then of course we're going to start the more social stuff. Have a look at the parallel play. If that's okay, then move on. Okay, but if you have a child who's not doing any of it, please start at the beginning and build the foundational skills. Going straight to cooperative play, as I described earlier, is like trying to get somebody to read an academic textbook without teaching them their alphabet. Okay, so parallel play, playing alongside. Then this associative play, and you'll see when I combined them earlier, I skipped this section and I said independent, parallel, cooperative, and those are the ones that you'll see common to a lot of play theories. But this one is coming out more and more. So associative play or maybe early cooperative play. So they seem to be interested in other children, okay, and some more than others, but they'll still need a bit of support, and the play isn't so directed. So they're not working towards a common goal, for example, but they might interact a little bit, or they might be happy to share toys and things like that, okay? And then cooperative plays where they will actually play with other children without any adult involvement. They're interested in specific friends and whether those friends want to be friends with them. And then the play looks different. They now often will have an aim, like building a fort, for example. Sharifa in the text, I have heard of Jasper isn't it like imitation? I'm not very fluent, I have to say, but I have heard of it in a former life. I haven't used it. I think it's there's a curriculum or a guide there, all right. But no, not sure. But if you would recommend it, I'll certainly have a look. But let's look at, so here we go. These are the strategies that I've been talking about, which are kind of my 5 main things that I think anyone who's teaching play skills should look at. Okay, so we talked about identifying reinforcers. That's important because when you're doing the teaching strategies, you need reinforcers. Okay. Increasing the range of toys, so conditioning or pairing up new reinforcers. And remember, giving lots of reinforcement when they try new things. Teaching imitation, that can be happening outside of play as well. I'm very happy to see that, you know, and imitation is so important for everything. But if we're doing it during playtime, then I would do it with objects. And remember, it's very good if you can go to 2-step imitation. Varied actions with toys. Okay, so I didn't focus a lot on, you know, discrete trials or prompting too much or fading prompts, but we can do it a little bit more loosely. We can still have actions that we want them to learn or to be able to do, but really we want to reinforce exploratory behavior and anytime a child is trying something for themselves, okay? Verbal behavior during play, communication temptation, make it fun. Be like, whoa, and the child's like, go, or now, ready, steady, and then go, and we drop something or we keep going with the action, whatever. So for the last piece of my talk this evening, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for bearing with me so far. I wanted to just talk about these last phases that were on the slide, 2 slides ago, the social aspects of play. And then I'm going to leave you with just a few fun activities, just because even the most creative and fun amongst us can run out of ideas from time to time. So parallel play, like I said, similar activity, no interaction. Sand, great. Go for it. Sandbox, make sure they all have their own like bucket and spade or whatever the case, whatever they have. Spoons and pots and bowls is fine. Again, like I said, I don't think we all need to go out buying super fancy toys. And no, the second code isn't shared. Yes, thanks for checking. And also I thank you for the reinforcement in the chat. So doll's house, this is nice, you know, that they can, or like a cooker, these kind of functional type toys, pretend play toys, car garages, all of that. This I really like. A train set where each child has a train on the same track. Okay, so we're encouraging them to be together to get this shared enjoyment, but they don't have to interact or depend on each other. Make sure there's enough space that they're not banging into each other too much, but maybe they will bang into each other and we'll say, whoa, that's so funny. Okay. The same tower with blocks or else 2 different towers. I'm a fan of blocks as well. So, you know, just put a box of blocks out on the floor and then both children can engage with them. Now, the thing about it is, right, we can say, oh, put the children at the train set and of course they'll do what we want, right? But, you know, if we've worked through some strategies, just so you know, I will be sharing, I'll share all of my presentation afterwards so it can get emailed out to you, okay? So I just want to acknowledge that just because we put children at a train set does not mean they will play with it. That's the importance of the groundwork and those earlier strategies that I've been talking about, okay? So you might know that we've got 2 children, maybe one on the spectrum and one is neurotypical, and we know they like trains. Perfect, go for it, right? We can use these strategies. I got ahead of myself. I actually had the point written for myself, you know. We can use prompting, we can use shaping, reinforcement. We can build for generalization by doing in different places with different people, different toys. So we know how to do those things. So use the strategies that you have, but just make sure that you're fading out the support as quickly as you can. Associative play, here we need to make the peers reinforcing, and that may happen just from the parallel play stage, or it may not. It depends, right? Tea party is gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely. We have a tea party, we all sit down. But back to pairing. So how can we do this? Any ideas in the chat? How are we now going to make the peers reinforcing? And while you're in the chat, I will put my email in the chat. How's that? I think that's gone to all participants now. The peer, oh, beautiful. The peer offers something fun freely. Yeah. And then the construction building where they play together. Peers deliver the reinforcers. Absolutely. So what I would do is that, you know, especially if someone's coming to your house, that they bring something that you just like leave outside for them, you know. Yeah, so the peers are delivering the reinforcement, absolutely. And remember, we wanted an activity to be more fun at the start because we were there. How can we make it more fun when the peer is there? Okay. So I think I didn't put any suggestions there. Actually, I wanted you to do the work for me. Okay. Yeah, play with the peer. You know, just make sure that the peer is delivering reinforcements. If it's two children who don't have amazing social skills, we can prompt that. Oh, look, you can give this here and you can give this here. More toys in the presence of the peer, brilliant. Or just bring out the big guns. You might have a super reinforcer that only comes out when they're playing with peers. Cooperative play, generally, we're talking about a shared goal. Turn taking, working together, problem solving, generous with praise, absolutely. Yeah, you guys are brilliant. Cooking. I don't know if this is like a cross-cultural phenomenon, but you know, like when you have Rice Krispie buns or Rice Krispie cakes, which is just like the cereal and melt the chocolate, and of course, safety first, supervised by an adult. But this is really fun because, you know, somebody can be in charge of getting the spoon and somebody hands the other one the chocolate, and then they take turns stirring. Then somebody pours in the Krispies and then they stir again and they spoon them out. Okay, so there was a question just came in about getting therapies. Feel free to email me. I wouldn't be able to address that now, but happy to help you. Okay, or to put you in the right direction. So building together, but maybe when it's more cooperative, it's like taking turns. They might plan it. Those kind of higher order things, or ball games are great. Again, we can teach this in a very sort of a basic way. And again, I've no problem with parents doing this, you know, even if they haven't done the parallel play phase. Of course, these ball games and these simple to and fro's are going to be very helpful, but just a really basic way of starting your turn taking, the teaching of turn taking. Just sit facing the child, roll the ball. So Alia's turn, okay? And if they don't roll back, just prompt them. Just give them a gentle push in the right direction, and use your least to most prompting. And then you can practice with different games and different partners. The other thing you can do for turn taking is like have a hat. So when someone has a hat, when the hat's on, it's my turn, and then I put it on your head and it's your turn. And we're prompting the verbal behavior all the time. Okay, I have a question here in the chat. Throw the ball, all of that stuff. Yeah. Response, interruption, redirection. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit because I think it's important to address this question. Dr. Murray mentioned using response, interruption, redirection to redirect behavior to play activities. However, it may trigger challenging behavior, especially in children with autism that has high OCD intensity, or so maybe they have a comorbid diagnosis, or maybe they're just especially rigid. What would be an alternative to this suggestion? Yeah. So, you know, I have said that we won't physically block or remove toys if that's going to cause undue stress to the child. At that point, if you really can't redirect, now if you're redirecting to something that they also might like, then you might be okay. But otherwise, it's about you conditioning up the new reinforcers, which is just time and patience, or you having something that is so exciting that they will stop engaging in the stereotypy. So it might be like a new kind of a lighty up toy or something like this, or it might be music, or it might be any number of things. It's definitely trickier if a child can kind of handle like, oh, look, what about this one? And they'll tolerate that, which actually most children will. Then it, you know, then it's easier. But if they don't, then you have to put the time, and you know, we're always putting time and effort into pairing up new reinforcers, but you might have to do more of that if a child is very, very rigid or very fixated on one set of toys. Okay. The best play for children. I'm going to write that down and come back to it. And if I don't, I'll email you. How's that? Because I know, baby Linda, you're coming to all of our workshops, so I know Michelle will be able to pick out your email address. Okay, I just wanted to leave us with, I've got 10 minutes. I was hoping to finish 1 minute early, so I'd show my super timing. Let's just get some fun ideas going. And again, I'm happy to take up any questions at the end. We will have to close out of the meeting, but you feel free to email me. Okay, has anyone ever made gloop? I'd love to hear in the chat. And I'm just going to show my only video of the whole thing. And I've got a fellow gloop lover. Great. This is the only video, and you will probably be like, this is not what we expected, but this is a great activity. Okay, it's a very sensory focused activity. Yeah, look, I'll let you look for yourselves, right? Okay, I just pushed it forward so we wouldn't waste too much time, but let me just tell you, it's corn flour. It must be corn flour. Maybe, Smitty, you didn't use the corn flour. Corn flour, water, and food coloring is optional, but let's have a quick look at it. Actually, just let me see if there was a way I could, sorry. Oh yeah, no, I'm not, I was warned the sound mightn't be amazing, but I'm happy to talk over it if that's the case. Can you hear the sound? Okay. Okay, so you don't have the sound. So sorry, we were trying to figure that out with IT at the start. There's some issue. I just wanted to show you what it actually looks like. So I'm going to forward on and I'll show you. Don't worry, you don't need the sound. You can see all they're doing there is stirring the water into the flour, a little bit of food coloring, and you can see how kind of stiff and rigid it is. Okay, but this is the magic of gloop. I want it. Oh, it's frame by frame. Okay. So the video isn't looking good. Okay, I'll send out the link. I would encourage you to have a look at it because you can see it's really gloopy and gooey and it's really, really fun. But I won't waste time showing a video that's not looking good. Okay. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay. The reason I'm saying gloop is because it's a really great sensory experience. You can actually pick it up and kind of roll it in a ball. You'll see that's in the video if you look at it. And then as you let it go, it just kind of drips out of your hand like a liquid. It's very cool stuff. Okay. Again, you can have it for the younger child. When you're trying to pair yourself up and the child doesn't really want to play with you, you can make gloop together like slime. Yeah. I think it's way, way, way better than slime because it kind of sets and then goes liquid again. It's super cool. Then for the older ones, this could be, I mean, my niece who's like 12 still plays with slime and this kind of stuff every now and then. So the older ones then can make it together like a cooperative activity. You can get some language. What do we need? Flour, stir. What will I do? Always build in as many layers as you can, especially as they're getting a little bit more advanced. And perfect for parallel play. Give them a little tray each of the gloop and then they can just play away themselves before they're ready to interact, you know? Again, so we're holding up, we're waiting for eye contact and pour, let it go, sand, water play, all that stuff is really important early on or really useful early on, but actually you can keep going with these type of activities all the way up as long as the child is enjoying them and you're building in more complexity in terms of language, in terms of peers. The other thing I thought, sensory bin activities, yeah, whatever you've got, you use it, right? Then another thing we can do in terms of pretend play is really tailor activities to children's interests. So if I've got, you know, a child I'm showing my age now, but back when I was an ABA tutor, Bob the Builder was one of the #1 characters. I mean, they loved him, right? So, you know, if the child is watching a cartoon, can we maybe create an activity that intersperses them or involves them? And then that's the reinforcing aspect, okay? I love this for like Bob the Builder type stuff. These are golf tees. Now, keep them out of the reach of children. They are a little bit sharp, but they're much safer than, you know, any real nails or anything. And I wouldn't do this with the very small ones. But, you know, I've seen these like toy workbenches and yeah, they're very cool, right? But I've done great stuff with golf tees and that's Oasis, like you use for flower arranging. And it's very inexpensive. You'll get it in any florist or you'll buy it online on Amazon or anywhere like that. Or get it from your local florist will probably deliver as well, right? And then you don't even need a hammer. I use a wooden spoon. Now, if you have a hammer, go for it. But my point is you don't really need lots of very fancy toys. So you're hammering these in. We're all singing Bob the Builder. We've got our little Bob the Builder figurine. We can take turns. We can share. We can do loads of things. Yeah, and I've got some more suggestions in the chat. I was just trying to think what's something somebody mightn't have thought of before, okay? And then we can do these kind of construction and pretend we're all Bob the Builder using these different activities. Yeah, and that's it. And if you've got any kind of games in the chat, then, you know, go in there, help people, and, you know, your ideas are going to be helpful for other people. Okay, Potato Head, yes, I did mean to pick that up earlier. Someone else said it. That's great for cooperative play, for independent play, everything. For chats, oh, which do you want? Oh, you need the ear. And they say, I want the ear, and then they put the ear in. Okay. Finally, I'm just wrapping up, but I just wanted to highlight that there are so many other strategies. I am a real fan of video modeling, fun to make and fun to use. You know, making little, very, very small videos. Parents, you can do this on a phone or an iPad. Take a video even of yourself playing with the toy, or prompt the child and take a video of them, and then they can copy their own video, okay? Activity schedules or books. So if you've got a child who doesn't have much staying power, or and someone else is saying that in the chat, that's great, or they'll only do one thing and then they'll go away. Sometimes they'll follow a schedule, especially if they're doing it in other aspects of their day or in school or whatever, you know, that they play with the blocks, then put the blocks away and take out the coloring, and then put the coloring away. And each time they may be flipping a page or moving a picture. So final thoughts. Oh yes, I'm going to give the last word, or maybe the second last word. The Early Autism Project in Malaysia has made really lovely sets of resources, and they've got all these little videos on YouTube, and they're just very user friendly. So I am citing them with credit, okay? Their top tips: play face to face. Okay, and I think that goes along with what we've been talking about. Observe the child, look for smiles and eye contact. Smile back if they're smiling. If they're smiling, that means something's going well. See, can we do more of that? Can we expand on it? Initiation shows that interest is building. I am never so happy as when I see a child instigate something. Either they go and get a toy themselves to play with, or they bring you to it because they... If you're seeing any initiations, that's very positive, and follow them and reinforce them. Any kind of independent, you know, and independent approaches towards play. Reinforce all verbal responses. Okay, I think we do that anyway. Keep activities, and I like the way they put this, short and successful. So especially those early stages that I'm talking about, don't keep pushing because you want more, because it's going so well, we're so excited. End on a high note, quit while you're ahead. And the same with the cooperative play. Don't push them past where they might be comfortable, you know, so very short activities at the start. That's the link to the video that I really liked. Respond to all efforts at communication. I think that's kind of like my take-home message. Early vocalizations can be shaped. So even if it sounds like kind of babble, or even if it's like, oh, or something excited like a shriek, respond in context. Oh yeah, the car's crashed, the tower fell, oh, we made a big mess. Okay, responding and in context, highlighting what it is that they're talking about, if you like. Okay, two great resources. I could have, again, spent a couple of hours talking about pivotal response treatment for autism, which has a very special or a very set... Sorry, excuse me, I'm reading the chat at the same time. Sorry, pivotal response treatment has specific kind of strategies or principles that they use, these pivotal behaviors, but they have some really good ideas in there as well, especially for like having play dates and things like that. And this book on the left here, Play and Social Skills for Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder, that's a really excellent excellent resource. It's a little bit expensive, but maybe if you're in a school, you could buy it and then take turns reading a chapter and reporting back, or if you're a parent, maybe you could buy it with somebody else. It's very accessible, and I really can't stress that enough. It should be in everybody's library if you have the opportunity. And here are my references. Okay. Okay. Oh, Lena, how are you? I didn't know you were there. I'd like to say thank you so much. Yeah. Let me know if you need anything. they're all the references that I used to create this presentation. And yeah, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Michelle. It's a massive organization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Clodagh. So at this point, I'm just going to stop the recording, but I have a couple more things to say, so if you can all just hang on. So I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you to all of you who are watching the recording of this evening's webinar.